Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be reviewing a very popular switch, the Cherry HyperGlide Black. So the Cherry Black HyperGlide, or just Cherry Black, is a legendary switch in the keyboard community, and there are a couple of variants. The one I have here is the HyperGlide, which is the older one. Some people call it the MX1A, whereas the more popular MX2A is a modern version of this switch, featuring better tolerances, good factory lubing, etc. It's a more consistent switch. So this guy that I have right here is dry stock. Now the Cherry Blacks all have their signature dimensions, which is basically a nylon body with a palm stem with a super ridiculous 80-gram bottom mount spring. So I don't really have the spring here. This spring, I spring swap mine to about a 57-gram bottom mount. This is TX springs. For the housings, there's nothing special because it is dried, so there's no lubing at all, even on the rails. Actually, there's a little bit of lube, so my bad. It comes mostly dry, but there's no lube on the rail, but there is lube on the pins where it touches the leaf. See the light? It's a very light lubing. So honestly, the Cherry Blacks basically come dry except for leaves. So yeah, HyperGlides, you'd have to mod them yourself. And what I felt when they were in stock, that they are absurdly scratchy. So it's so scratchy that it feels a bit annoying and very loud. So my recommendation is to coat it with a very light layer of lube to preserve that signature cherry scratch and to make the switches a ton smoother and deeper. In terms of tolerances, the housings are extremely loose. I've had cases where I tried to pull out a switch from a keyboard and only the top housing came out. So I highly recommend filming these switches as well, just to solve that issue. Sound wise, I don't think filming made much of a difference. Honestly, I would have said that it made it a tad deeper if I had to force something out, but honestly I wouldn't be able to tell any difference. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed the sound test, and now moving into some of the notes I hear from this switch. Of course, this is a Cherry switch, so it has that signature scratchy sound that Cherry is known for. And honestly, I'm in love with this scratch, especially when pairing it with an Alu plate, because it gives it just a hint of metallic notes as well, which is something I really like. I don't recommend this for foamy builds. As you heard, the foamed up Agar and Keychron totally removed the scratch, which made the Cherry special. And at that point, I would just recommend you going with an entirely different switch altogether. I'm starting to believe it when people say that foam sort of removes the character of the switches, because from my sound test, it did remove the signature scratch on the Cherries. I'm a bit disappointed by that, but it's still like something I learned. However, if you still like that, then there's no harm in it, right? After all, this hobby is just for fun. Loudness wise, the stock, it can be insanely loud, but when lubed, it is passable. It's around 60 decibels, which is something as if someone was having a conversation beside you. It's a more bassy switch, so it leans more towards the talk side, but when you type it on like a foamless board, you just hear the scratch, you don't really hear the talk. Okay, moving into the stem wobble test. So on the left is stock, and on the right is Lubed+Filmed. So there's quite a bit of decently bad stem wobble on the north to south. A little bit on the east to west. And then for filmed, north to south, there's a bit, but it's a bit tighter. Then on the north, the east to west, it's very, very tight. So filming does help with stem tolerances. It makes it a lot tighter. So it's quite nice. And if I were to put keycaps on, there's a slightly more bad wobble on the stock as expected, but honestly, it's not to the point that you will actually be bothered by it. The only reason why I highly recommend filming is just to get rid of that loose tolerance between top and bottom housing, because sometimes when you remove a stock switch, your top will just come off only. I don't know if I can do that, but yeah, sometimes when you pull it off, only the top sort of comes out, and that's not nice. Filming completely removes that issue. In terms of feel, so these Cherry Blacks are 80-gram bottom out. It's super crazy. It basically necessitates you to spring swap them, because otherwise it's super difficult to type on. And I also recommend changing the springs. So change the springs to a weight you're comfortable at, loop them to get a slightly smoother experience and a less scratchy, noisy sound, and then finally you have to film them just so that you can tighten the tolerances between the top and the bottom housings. Alright, moving into the RGB test. It's a black housing. There's no light. Next section. Alright, so what is my verdict on these switches? These are honestly great for the price. They come incredibly cheap, 30 US cents a piece. However, I only recommend them to people who are ready to fully mod it. Lubing, filming, spring swapping. If you're not into that, I just get the more ready-made MX2A, which only would require you to spring swap it. However, I do see merit in these HyperGlides, in the fact that you can truly customize the sound to your preference in regards to the film choice and the lube amount, especially the lube amount, because I really like the Cherry scratch, so I don't want to overlube this switch. I put a very thin coat of lube just to preserve as much of the scratchiness as possible, which I wouldn't have been able to done with a pre-lubed MX2A. how I see it is that the HyperGlides are more like a blank canvas, and you as the typer are the painter in a sense, whereas the MX2A is more plug and play, and it's more like a bot or a ready-made painting. So this is like a blank canvas that you paint on, and the MX2A is kind of like a ready-made painting. So these is honestly one of the best switches I've tried for this year, definitely in the top 5, and it's a mainstay for me. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and until next time, peace.